assembled before you 5 characters to whom shit has happened, shit is probably still happening, and most definitely will continue to happen. This is a storytelling panel, and one of the more eloquently named ones, I think, at South by Southwest, I must say. It wasn't my idea. We're basically just going to share with you stories, blood, guts, vomit, lawyers, you know, whatever happens to come up. We will probably lapse into total and utter chaos at some point in the evening, at which point I will blow my whistle. And, but I'm not afraid to use it. Okay, let me briefly introduce you to our characters.
From the right, from the left.
On my extreme left, and he is an extreme leftist, Mr. Al Kooper, who you, I'm sure, know from all kinds of things.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We're gonna do a entire section on Bob Dylan stories, and Al's not going to tell you any of them because he's tired of telling them. Al is a very successful producer, songwriter. You know him from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Electric Flag, and of course, he wrote This Diamond Ring, which...
But I wasn't in the Electric Flag.
You weren't in Electric Flag? You know Barry Goldberg?
Personal friend of mine.
Me too. He lied to me. Anyway.
Shut up. Not you, him.
He's a classic musician in that he wrote several 60s classic songs, and we're happy to have him. I'm sure he's going to enlighten us greatly throughout the afternoon. Next to him, Mr. Ian McLagan. We call him Mac. Yeah, because he likes that.
I'm a friendly guy.
He is. He's just that kind of a guy. Played for years in Small Faces and many other... You just play fabulous keyboards and have done that for a long time. He's done a lot of great solo work. Played with Bonnie Raitt, and he's going to have many stories to tell us, I hope.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, he said. And on my right is the ex-leader of the XDBs, and I think he's legally changed his name to that as well.
Just call me X.
Right. And now a bandmate of mine in the Continental Drifters, an intelligent and witty songwriter, and a nice guy, but I wouldn't tell him that to his face, Mr. Peter Holsapple. And on his right is our resident pleasure baron, Mr. Mojo Nixon, who, well, he did allow us to see Martha Quinn in a whole new light, and will probably be... he will be sort of dragging us through scatological references in rock and roll, and we will be happy to be there. Thank you.
I'm here to bring the shit to you.
Thank you. The shit as in, yes, as in it happens. Okay. This is, like I said, this is for entertainment purposes only, and maybe you'll actually learn something, but let's not count on it. The first very broad category we're going to throw out is our earlier days as musicians, shit that has happened to us when we're first starting out. And I'll just tell briefly a story that happened to the Bangles. Our first trip to New York City, we were trying to impress the moguls at CBS, whom we had not yet met. We were opening up for, I don't want to say who because they factor in rather negatively later on in the story, and we were playing at Radio City Music Hall. We did not get a sound check because opening bands never do, and we played our set, or for the first 6 or 7 songs of it, and I kept thinking, wow, this is a really dry sounding room. I just, you know, it's kind of interesting. It sounds so different than I would think Radio City Music Hall would sound. I'm hearing nothing back from the house, and I saw my road manager waving madly at me from the side of the stage. It turned out that the none of the vocals or none of the amplification, none of the master had been plugged in at all, and we were up there singing basically acoustically with electric equipment, which was turned out it was sabotage, to be honest, and it was quite, we were in tears, but we were an all-girl band, so we're allowed to do that. So we were very upset, and And that's some of the shit that happens to early bands. I'm not going to say.
Come on.
Pay
Hey,
me
give us
money.
a clue.
No holds barred.
Give us 3 choices.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair cop.
Yeah, 3 choices.
Well,
Come on.
anyway, all right. It was either. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. I just, you know,
You're too nice to
karma is
moderate.
karma. Karma is karma. I've got my whistle.
I want to tell another early road story.
Okay, early road story. That sounds good
me
too.
and Skid are, this is in 86 or 85. We're in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, which is not one of our strongholds. And there's this awful gig there. What's that place called?
WC Don's.
WC Don's. And
The
it,
toilet
Oh, we
on the
played
front
there.
porch.
okay, it used to be, well, the whole room was like the size of where the soundboard is over there, but smaller. Okay, now, when it got really hot, they got some nails, they bent them back, and they took the wall out of the building. They took the whole wall out. That was the air conditioning. Now and when I sang really loud, when I go like, well, the lights would dim, like the power. Okay, now here's the key to the story. I was really high on mushrooms. I was super high on mushrooms, so I just kept doing that. Ah! And the lights would dim. I go, wow, man. So the moral of that story is don't get really high in real shitty clubs.
And low voltage clubs. Go.
Talking of, we did a festival once. This was with the Faces in Germany. It was the Love and Peace Festival of Germany. And the German race have a different approach to love and peace, I think. It was like a new idea over there. And Sly and the Family Stone turned up. Sly got his money and left. And the Canty came and played. And there was a force 10 gale. And we played in our overcoats, leaning into the wind. And there were people, there was about 20 people out there with little fires in front of their tents. And to cap it all, someone came in and shot the promoter and stole the money. Love and peace, German style.
Obviously, none of us have ever done drugs or ever had a drop to drink, but just as if we had, how about sort of mind-altered experiences or experiences which occurred while your mind was altered?
This was a long time ago. A long time ago, and I've since overcome these little problems. But in about 66, I was doing a show with the Small Faces, God knows where, and I woke up. I mean,
That's it!
on stage, and I'm looking at an audience just like you, and I'm thinking, the hell am I doing here? How do you play this thing? It's scary. Shit happens. You know.
Shit happens.
Once upon a time, my old band, the DBs, decided for some reason or other that most of us would take LSD before the show started, which was something that, you know, if you know the DBs, we're not exactly the most touchy-feely bunch of guys to begin with. And it sort of kicked in about halfway through the first song, which was an extremely searingly fast cover of Everybody's Happy Nowadays by the Buzzcocks, at which point we got halfway through and suddenly my mind said, wow, this has been going on for hours, hasn't it? And the song's only about 2.5 minutes long in its original state, and I didn't realize, but somehow it just went on and on. That evening could have been a Grateful Dead show for us. And I think we just turned around and looked at Will, who was the drummer, and he just had this cartoon balloon of one slow-moving paisley going back and forth in it. But we were great, allegedly, so who knows?
Oh, you definitely had to say.
I've already told my drug story.
Oh, and there, you only have one, of course.
Yes, that's the only time I've ever experimented with mind-altering substances.
And you found it to be not the thing for you, and you
Not the thing for me, you
discouraged
know.
everyone from doing it.
Yeah, that
you know.
whole song I sang about, you know, mushroom maniac, legalized drugs, you know.
Right, right.
You know, once actually in, what was that, in Bloomington, Indiana, this was right when ecstasy was coming on the market. And this crazy guy, Johnny Camaro or something, he used to live down here. Anyway, he gave me this stuff in this party, you know, after I followed him around into the bathroom 900 times. That's a whole nother story. Anyway,
We'll get to the
he
bathroom
gave me this
stories later.
stuff, and I stayed awake all night. and I had this big revelation about, not about God or religion or anything, but how Vince Lombardi and the NFL was what made America great. And I told the band this, and they put me in the back of the van and moved on to the next town.
How about shit happens in the recording studio?
I think it was either 1966 or 1967, I was hired to play keyboards on a Who session. And this is the classic Who with Keith Moon. And they were recording tracks for the album The Who Sell Out. And we were recording at some place that I had in the city where I lived in New York, at a studio called Talent Masters, which was in Times Square, a very unusual place to have a recording studio at that time. And I thought that was really weird because I knew all these studios and I was going to this place I never heard of to work with The Who. So I got there and we spent about 8 or 9 hours recording this track called Rael, which is on The Who Sell Out. And we got the track. It was very complicated. It was sort of a forerunner of Tommy in that it had different musical parts in it, and it was complicated and everything. And we finally got it, and we put it all together, and they started doing some vocals on it, and then it was about 8 o'clock at night, and everybody was just fried. And so everyone left, and we said, well, we'll reconvene at noon tomorrow. I said, okay. So I got there about 11:45, and the engineer was this English guy named Chris Houston. And I came in, and he said, a terrible thing has happened. I said, what? He said, well, the assistant engineer just left the tape out without putting it in the box on the counter, and the cleaning woman threw it in the garbage. Now, mind you, they didn't pick up the garbage, but there it was in the garbage, and it had, you know, like ashes all over it and gum and soda and stuff. So he had taken it out and checked it, and the first 15 seconds of the song was ruined. The rest of it was okay. So I said, well, that's not too bad. We could probably punch that in or do something and make an edit. I said, I wouldn't worry about that, Chris. I said, just tell Pete when he comes in. So they come in, and Chris says, Pete, I need to talk to you for a second. And they go into a corner, and I am watching this. Just want to see what's going to happen. Because, I mean, that's what I would do. I would say, no big deal, we'll just do something, fix it. So Pete is not happy. And I don't hear any of the conversation except for the end where Chris Houston says, you know, I'm sorry, it's just one of those things that happens. And he kind of walks away so that the conversation is ended, Chris does, and Pete is kind of pacing around the control room, getting more and more like a bull in a bull ring. And we're in the control room, and he picks up the engineer's chair and flings it through the glass in the control room. And this is, for those of you who don't know about this, this is very expensive. It's not just a piece of glass, it's an engineering thing that they take weeks to figure out. It's over. He just takes the chair and throws it through the glass and goes, and he, on his way over his shoulder going out the door, he says, well, Chris, you know, things just happen.
It happens. That is so true. We all have done TV, press. We've all been misquoted. We've all been shot from unflattering angles. Mac, you got any press stories, or didn't you? Magazines.
No, but going back to the drugs.
Yeah, let's fall back on that one. That's always a good
Actually,
one.
no, nothing to do with the press, but when I first was offered the position, like I was offered a position, but I joined the Small Faces back in '65. They'd fired their previous organ player because he was too tall, basically, and he couldn't play the organ. And so I was hired because I was the right size 5'5.5", and could play the organ, or at least had a Hammond organ, and that helped. But so I saw the manager before I met the guys in the band, and this afternoon, and he said, okay. He was trying to impress me because he knew full well he wasn't going to pay me a penny, that he was going to steal every penny we made. But he said, how much do you earn now? And the wisest move I ever made, I said, £20 a week. That's what my father earned. So I knew that was a lot of money. And he believed me. And he said, you start at 30. And I thought, I am a shrewd businessman. What did I know? He said, you start at 30, because he was English, but he would like to think he was American. And he liked to think he was James Cagney. I'll name names if you want. Anyway, so he said, but you're on probation for a month. He said, and if they really like you, you get an even split of the band. I said, you're kidding? Okay, boy. The guys come in, fell about laughing because we were just very similar and similar taste in humor and smoking habits. And we had like a month and a half, and I'm thinking, no one said anything. I'm thinking, oh, it's over. They just don't want to tell me. But as you know, in this business, people will tell you straight away if they don't want you around. And I waited another couple of weeks. I said to Ronnie Lane, so what do you think? Am I in the band? He said, of course you're in the band. I said, well, I'm on probation. He said, fucking probation? Let's go up and see Don. This is our manager, you see. So we go to his office. He says, here, Don. He's in the band. And from that day, I got £20 a week because that's what they were getting. I never got an even split. None of us did. Shit happens.
Shit happens.
I should have shut up.
Drug stories,
Drug
everyone?
stories.
I want to talk about managers.
You do want to talk about managers. I thought you didn't want to talk about managers.
Yeah, this is a classic.
He needs to vent.
Right. I mean, there's a classic example. Is the manager, trying to make you rich or make you famous or do what's good for you? I had my old manager, Charlie Brown. He was a good guy. He was a great guy at getting record deals. And unfortunately, I had already signed the dumbest deal on the planet with Enigma Records. My soul, all my children, and my gonads for $2 a year, or something like that.
Seems fair.
Anyway, I had the falling out with Charlie over. He thought my career imperative. This is right when Elvis Everywhere is happening and everybody's calling, on the moon except, whoever I want to call. Regis and Kathy Lee are having some Elvis thing, and they are begging to have me on. But I'm supposed to go be on this radio station in Philadelphia. This guy's been playing me ever since the first album. And I'm going like, well, I can't really blow him off. Plus, it's Regis and Kathy Lee. Little did I know that Yanni was going to sell zillions of records, through Regis and Kathy Lee. And, I finally had to say to my manager, look, man, I ain't fucking going on Regis and Kathy Lee. Housewives at home ironing aren't going to buy my record. They don't want to hear a song called Stuffin' Martha's Muffin. They don't want to hear a song called I Ain't Gonna Piss in No Jar No More. Little did those people know in the future I'm going to write a song called You're Gonna Tie My Pecker to My Leg. This is not getting me on Regis and Kathy Lee. And my manager was adamant. I mean, he went crazy. He did all the manager things. He was like, you'll never work in this town. The whole 9 yards. I was like, look, man, I ain't going on Regis and Kathy Lee. I said, if I wanted to get a job and make money, hell, I'd be a lawyer and be suing your ass right now. But yeah, Regis and Kathy Lee. That was what was going to make me big and famous. And now here I am.
I'm going to tell a story about an extremely embarrassing moment on stage, and then everyone else up here is going to tell their most embarrassing moment on stage.
I told me.
Or not. Okay. So, no, you absolutely don't have to. The Bangles were playing in New York City at the Pier. It was sort of an outside venue. The sun was in our eyes. It was extremely uncomfortable. But everything was fine. We'd been on the road forever. And as one of my fabulous costumes, I had personally designed these pan velvet bell-bottom trousers. May I say this was in 1985 when nobody except for Jeff McDonald of Red Cross and myself were wearing bell-bottoms. And I say that proudly. That I had been wearing basically for most of the tour. And I put them on not thinking anything of it, of course, because I'd been wearing for most of the tour. I did wash them. Halfway through the first song, it was June 16th, Paul McCartney's birthday. I remember that too. Halfway through the first song, the trousers split from the waist all the way through the crotch. I wasn't wearing underwear because I didn't want VPL, visible penny line. And there I was for all of New York. And I was looking desperately to the side of the stage for our wardrobe girl. We had those then. And she was out by the soundboard about 4 miles out, checking on how great we all looked. And obviously I could not get a hold of her. I'm looking over to my guitar tech, I had them then too, and trying to gesture wildly for him to go into the wardrobe case and find me a skirt. And he keeps going. Finally, he managed to understand me. Meanwhile, I'm trying to continue the song and not turn my back to the audience, feeling that wonderful, cool breeze. And he finally did bring me a skirt, which I then had to somehow manipulate myself into along the side of the stage, and this was an open area. Shit happens. And which I managed to do. So I played the rest of the set in a mini skirt with no underwear, feeling very free. And as and Tom Cruise, of course, was at that show. And after the set, I was sort of sheepishly meeting him and saying, well, thanks for being here. And he said, I loved the costume change. Are you serious? Okay, fess up, guys. Someone else. Embarrassing moment.
Well, Face's biggest gig in Los Angeles in 1970-something was, I mean, we were really excited. We played Anaheim Stadium. Nice little gig, you know. And, intimate. Yeah, intimate. Fleetwood Mac opened for us and a few other bands. I forget exactly who else, but our equipment was in Phoenix. They never got it there, and like they kept saying, oh yeah, it'll turn up, and then next time it was in, I don't know, Tucson, whichever's nearest. But it never made it. The truck broke down twice. So we rented everything from SIR, which, sorry I rented is the way I understand it. And shit in red cases, that's why it's that. But, I mean, everything from, I mean, guitars, guitar picks, cables, drumsticks. But I just bought this beautiful Hammond organ, had it, you know, painted and stripped down, and it was, you know what I'm saying? It was a piece of work. It was my, you know, it was a wife to me. And at the end of it, or during the show, I had a rented piano and this, that, and the other. Rod had a real, this is Rod Stewart, right? Instead of those light mics, he used light mic stands. He had a big, heavy old thing. He was trying to swing this thing, it wasn't working. So we said, let's smash everything up because we don't own it. And we're angry. And we played a very short set. It was awful. We were out of tune, it was awful. And at the end of it, of course, we smashed the piano up and da-da-da. And Ronnie Wood jumps on my organ, on the Hammond organ, that is, and proceeds to smash that up. The only bit of equipment I owned, so. Shit happens, you know.
I had a nice show in New York a couple of years ago. I was having sinus problems or something and doing a Planned Parenthood benefit at the Wetlands, which I'd never even stepped in before, and doing it with Matthew Sweet, and here's me out there with the acoustic guitar, the usual stuff that I do these days, and I'm playing along, and people are looking at me like something is really wrong, and I'm just churning away in my usual style, and I get about 4 songs into the set, and feeling okay, but things feel sort of weird. My erstwhile manager comes up to the stage and hands me a wet washcloth and says, here, put this on your nose. You're having a nosebleed all over your guitar, all over yourself. It was extraordinary. It just, talk about your deflating experiences.
At Planned Parenthood, you're having the big nosebleed.
I'm really glad to be here.
Susanna Hoffs insisted on watching Scarface 47 times on one tour. We finally had to take the tape and hide it in one of the bays under the bus. I told her, we lost it. Sorry. She liked that scene, you know. She liked that scene.
It was a good scene.
I thought so. I thought it was good too.
47 times.
I memorized it. I memorized it. Apparently Peter did. No one wants to talk about bandmates, or their...
Well, this is related to a
Oh,
bandmate.
that
This is
related
when
is
I was a
good, you know, we're
bandmate
like-
of someone. This is getting onto the top subject I want to get onto is Bob Dylan stories with Al. I want to hear a couple of stories from
We've got
Al.
about an hour of those.
But this
Let's
is
do
one
it.
of my Bob Dylan stories. It was the first gig on a European tour in '84. And he's not known to be very sociable, really, is he? I mean, he's not your friendly guy. Anyway, it wasn't with me that day anyway. So we asked that we have a set list, or at least some idea of some of the songs that we may be doing within the next couple of months. I mean, I had a book with me, a paperback book of his lyrics that I happened to be reading, and there's 450 songs in there, you know, and he could have done any one of them, word for word perfect, right? But we wouldn't know, and so Bill Graham brought him into the dressing room, and for a pally pre-gig clue as to what we were doing. So he came with this sheet of paper anyway, with like 4 songs in a box here, and a couple over here, and another 3 here, and another 2 over there. It just wasn't half a set, you know, and we thought, okay, that's an indication, because he didn't do any of those songs, as it turned out, not one of them. But he came in and he said, it was pouring with rain, by the way. This is Verona in Italy. Played this outside Colosseum. Beautiful place. And pouring with rain. And he said, say, Ian, sometimes I go into Ronald Reagan when I do Dylan. And occasionally it becomes Donald Duck. My chap Duck. But it's basically, say, Ian, what are they wearing? I said, wearing? What do you mean? Who? He said, the audience. What are they wearing? I said, Bob, it's raining. They're wearing raincoats. He said, I like your jacket. It's yours. No, it was the shirt, that's right. He took the jacket from the bass player, from Glenn, and he took my shirt and wore it that night and carried it around the rest of the tour. I never wore it again. I don't know where my story's going now. It's my Bob Dylan story.
Let's continue in Bob Dylan stories.
Please.
More Dylan stories.
I live in Nashville now, and at least I've lived there for 5 years, and every week before Thanksgiving, Bob comes through on his way to Minnesota, where he celebrates Thanksgiving. I think there's a farm there or something, and that's where his family convenes. So I expect him around that time to call me and show up at the house. So this particular Thanksgiving, I was in the middle of doing scoring a film for TV that I had a very short deadline on, and I was thinking around that time, God, what if Bob calls? What am I going to do? I can't really hang with him because I got to get this movie done, or I'm going to get screwed. So sure enough, Bob calls. He says, yeah. I said, yeah. He says, do you know where the Hermitage Hotel is? And I'm thinking, be negative. I said, no, I sure don't, Bob. He says, oh. I said, is that where you're at? He says, yeah. I said, well, you know, I could send my engineer down there to get you. I'm working in the studio here, and I can't get away to pick you up. And I know he don't want my engineer to come get him, because he doesn't know my engineer. So he went, oh, well. He says, you don't know where the Hermitage Hotel is? I said, no. I said, you know, I could call up information and call the Hermitage Hotel. And why don't I do that? He says, okay, Al, why don't you call up and find out where I am, and then call me back and tell me.
Pretty much says it.
You gotta love that guy.